Well, good evening and welcome to another Restore GBNI on a Wednesday evening. And normally, the Wednesday evenings, it's about the UK. It's about the links and the bonds that we have right around the United Kingdom. It's about the people of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And it's a time when we come together. But tonight, this evening, I mean, we couldn't not talk about something that has happened today, and something that will actually change, I guess, the course of history. And that was that Joe Biden and his conglomerate, they were elected today in America. So we see the end, temporarily, I think, of Donald Trump. And we see the new American administration coming into power. And if we had been watching closely to what has been happening over the last few weeks, if we had been listening to the language and what is intended, you know, I would fear that things might just go down the wrong path. And what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about, you see, the loss of our freedoms, the loss of, our ability to say what it is that we see, our ability to tell the truth. I mean, what did Orwell say? Orwell said that in times of universal deceit, telling the truth will be a revolutionary act. People, I believe that as a result of what just happened today, we all might have to become revolutionaries. I would like to start off by, look, we've got quite a few guests on this evening. We have a man from America who knows a lot about American politics. And I mean, this will interest you whenever we bring this guy on. We have Jack Ross from Turning Point UK. He's the operations director, and also Jack spent a bit of time in America over the time whenever, just before the elections and the run up to the elections, along with Nigel Farage. So Jack knows a great deal about what has been going on in America. And also we've got one of our other regular guests, a man called James Dalton. And James Dalton is also well tuned into the goings on in America. So I think we've got a good panel this evening to be talking about America. Now, I know that sometimes when you talk about other affairs, when you talk about world affairs, it puts people here in Northern Ireland off, it puts people in the United Kingdom off. But people, we literally have to talk about this evening. We have to examine what this means for us, and we have to examine what potentially is coming down our line as a result of what has just happened today. There's an old saying that America sneezes and we catch a cold. I just hope that cold isn't another plague, and a plague of huge proportion, which could destroy the course of our world. And let's just say, let's hope that it doesn't destroy things as we previously have known it. So I'd just like to play you a little a speech from Trump, and I'm told by I'm just going to try to say this here. Is it Joe Basri? And Joe can actually correct me here, but I'm told by Joe that this is probably the greatest speech that Donald Trump ever gave. And what is it about? It's about being patriotically proud to be who you are. And that's no matter where you live. That's no matter why you live in America. That's no matter why you live in England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, or Ireland, or any of those countries right across the Western world. And what is wrong with being a patriot? What is wrong with wanting to stand up, wanting to protect your nationality, your national identity? What is wrong with being patriotically proud to be who you are? And this is what lies at the crux of what's happening right now. You see, there's so many people in our world that have been taught by way of a lie that it's wrong to be patriotically proud to say, be British, I'm British, or to be patriotically proud to be American, or any other nationality that you have. So for too long has our children been indoctrinated through schools to actually believe that the nation state, and I got this from a professor, which he's a Marxist professor. What did he say? He said to me that Britain for the British, Ireland for the Irish, and America for the Americans is unchristian, pernicious, and politically dangerous. So that's what we're up against today in 2021. So I'd just like to start off by playing this speech by Donald Trump, and this will set the scene for the chat that we're going to have this evening, the context of everything that we're going to be speaking about. So without any further ado, Donald Trump.
No movement that seeks to dismantle these treasured American legacies can possibly have a love of America at its heart can't happen. No person who remains quiet at the destruction of this resplendent heritage can possibly lead us to a better future. The radical ideology attacking our country advances under the banner of social justice. But in truth, it would demolish both justice and society. It would transform justice into an instrument of division and vengeance, and it would turn our free and inclusive society into a place of repression, domination, and exclusion. They want to silence us, but we will not be silenced. We will state the truth in full, without apology. We declare that the United States of America is the most just and exceptional nation ever to exist on earth. We are proud of the fact that our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and we understand that these values have dramatically advanced the cause of peace and justice throughout the world. We know that the American family is the bedrock of American life. We recognize the solemn right and moral duty of every nation to secure its borders. We remember that governments exist to protect the safety and happiness of their own people. A nation must care for its own citizens first. We must take care of America first. It's time. We believe in equal opportunity, equal justice, and equal treatment for citizens of every race, background, religion, and creed. Every child of every color, born and unborn, is made in the holy image of God. We want free and open debate, not speech codes and cancel culture. We embrace tolerance, not prejudice. We support the courageous men and women of law enforcement. We believe that our children should be taught to love their country, honor their history, and respect our great American flag. We stand tall, we stand proud, and we only kneel to Almighty God. They seek to dissolve the bonds of love and loyalty that we feel for our country and that we feel for each other. Their goal is not a better America. Their goal is to end America. For the sake of our honor, for the sake of our children, for the sake of our union, we must protect and preserve our history, our heritage, and our great heroes. And we will teach our children to know that they live in a land of legends, that nothing can stop them, and that no one can hold them down. They will know that in America, you can do anything, you can be anything, and together we can achieve anything.
What a speech, eh? And I would just like to sort of, before we move around the screen, we'll move to yourself, Joe. And Joe, maybe you'd like to correct me if I got the pronunciation of your name wrong. But as we go, I mean, what did he say there? He was talking about Judeo-Christian values. And I would just like to speak out a little bit about Judeo-Christian values. And no matter why you believe in God, no matter why you don't believe in God, Judeo-Christian values, I mean, what's that all about? What is the cornerstone of Judeo-Christian values? You see, it's free will. It's your absolute right to do as you want to do. Your belief, your culture, your way of life, your lifestyle, and your lifestyle choices. they should be between you and your fellow enthusiasts, and they should never be permitted to interfere in anyone else's way of life. And, choose you this day whom or what you will serve. And that is the cornerstone of Judeo-Christian values. Now, what is the opposite of that? The opposite of that is totalitarianism. And that's what we are fighting against today. Free will, your right to do as you have done over the years, or will that change? I guess that's what the real question is at the heart of what has just taken place today. Joe, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about the show that you run, and then over to you. I'd like you to give some commentary on what you just seen there.
Sure. My name is Joe Bazraoui. I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. I have a show called Cup of Joe, you see up here. We talk about, what's happening in the world currently and fighting for conservative values, fighting for Judeo-Christian values. And I'll tell you what, America was founded under very unique values of rights are not given by man or government, but they're given by God. They're God-given natural rights. It's very unique in the Constitution that, it says that. And I think that, it's very important that we acknowledge that these are Judeo-Christian values. They come from the Bible. They come from, religion. And recently, in the last year or so, and we've seen this globally, really, our right to practice religion has been under attack, right? In the name of COVID, in the name of this virus, where you can't go to church, you can't go to synagogue, you can't go to worship God in your community because the government told you not to. This is a complete infringement on our God-given right, our natural right to practice our religion. This is what we've seen in America. This is what we've seen in the UK. And it's disgusting. This goes further and further into what is the opposite of Judeo-Christian values. Like you said, totalitarianism. It goes further than that. This is cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism is taking over the world by storm, and we see this coming from China. Back during the USSR, that was what they lived by, cultural Marxism. Getting rid of religion completely, getting rid of your freedom of expression and assembly. And we're seeing that right now with this new administration coming in, what they've already done in just, a little over an hour. Joe Biden is going to be having these executive orders, I think it's about 10 executive orders today that are going to be infringing on our constitutional rights, mandating a 100-day mask mandate and shutting down the country once again. So we see that the left, the radical left, the Marxists, they don't care about you. They don't care about this country. They're not patriotic. What they care about is their own self-interest, their own selves, and their own power. So this is what we have to fight against. This is taking over the world by storm right now. And it's one of those things where it's, it happens very suddenly, right? Gradually, but then suddenly. Kind of like you're being bankrupt, right? When you're being bankrupt, you lose, or becoming bankrupt, you start to lose money, right? Here and there, you don't really notice, and then suddenly it just happens. You're bankrupt. This is what's happening right now with our rights. Suddenly, we're going to be having our rights completely taken away, stripped out of our hands after this gradual, long, especially during COVID, of just stripping away just a few rights for this sense of security, this sense of safety. And under Joe Biden, I think we're going to see that happen very, very quickly.
Yeah. Jack, would you just like to explain to people who you are, what it is that you do, and also enter into some commentary with reference to what you just said?
So my name's Jack Ross. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Turning Point UK, which is largely a student movement which rolls back against the attacks in education from left-wing biases in education. So my main job is highlighting the sort of indoctrination which goes on in our educational system. And I think it's mostly relevant now. We see why things like the media are so anti-Trump and why they're so extreme at the moment. So a lot of these university graduates who are getting radicalized at university are going into top high-flying jobs where they're controlling things like the media. They're bringing their university politics straight into a job. And the worry is that the radicalization has got so bad recently that we're not seeing the normal trend of people swap back to conservative principles by the time they're 30, because we're seeing societal differences to 10, 20 years ago, when people would be owning a house by the age of 30, they'd be having a family, and everything. We're not seeing that anymore. We're seeing people more likely to live in their parents' basement, unfortunately, or in a room in their house, not contributing as much as they could be, and getting angry about it and trying to find someone to blame, which ultimately leads to them sort of listening to and keeping their leftist policies. So yeah, I think wider than that, in terms of what's been happening with Trump, I think certainly from the British point of view, it's been very concerning to see how most of our politicians abandoned him. Again, it was in the press a few weeks before the election. The Conservatives were told by their advisors to stop backing Trump and start supporting Biden because they thought Biden was going to win, which is problematic. That our leadership is, again, they're not making the moral judgments. They're doing what they're being told to do by their advisors. It's completely U-turning on years of friendship and endorsement. So yeah, and again, as you mentioned at the start, I did go to America to help campaign for Trump. I think we're going to talk about it later on in the episode, and it's not so much because I'm concerned about what's happening with him in America. Obviously, I want the Americans to have the best president, and I thought out of the two for them, it was Trump. But is how Biden's presidency is going to impact the UK. I think we're going to be dragged into more foreign unnecessary wars, as we saw with the likes of Bush and Obama, and I think we're going to see a huge infringement in our sovereignty in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and over to you, James. Also, if you could just explain to people who you are, and then if you can go into a bit of commentary with reference again what you've just seen with the Trump statement or speech at the very start.
Yes, thanks, John. My name's James Dalton. I'm from the Five-Star Direct Democracy Party in the United Kingdom. I'm a local parish councillor, and I'm a bit of a political analyst. Amongst other things, I'm a professional engineer. Thanks for inviting me on the show. It's a historic day, I think, in world history. It's one that will be looked back upon as a pivot point, I think. And the speech of Donald Trump that you played there was classic Donald Trump. He was very much a president who got out to the people, spoke to them regularly. At length, he welcomed being in amongst the people, and a lot of the themes that he ran through there will resonate with, especially with classic liberals. He talked about equality in terms of equality under the law, which classic liberals talk about. He talked about justice and social justice, and how the social justice movement is the antithesis of seeking justice and social social contentment. He spoke about free and open debate. He spoke about Judeo-Christian values. He spoke about the very things that people who were brought up, I'm a little bit older than the other guests today, but people that my grandparents who fought in the Second World War spoke about how these things were exactly what were at stake in the 1940s. It was totalitarianism against freedom. And our modern day battle, and we've seen it play out over the last 4 years. We've seen in essence an anti-politician, a non-politician, get involved in politics, which is quite rare. And he was welcomed by the political establishment not very well at all. He received a record number of votes in 2016 of 63 million, record number for a Republican. And after 4 years in office, he increased that vote by around about 12 million. I mean, the people responded at the ballot box, and clearly we've ended up with the result where Joe Biden has evidently got a lot more votes, 80 million, very popular man, and he's been inaugurated today with the hordes of Biden supporters in Washington D.C. I'm sure the footage from this year's inauguration will show the superb support that that Biden, who's achieved such a record result, how great it is. Obviously, that's not what we're seeing. We're seeing something a little bit more concerning. We've seen Washington D.C. turned into a militarized zone today, and an inauguration where we've seen about 3 or 4 faces and many people who really we won't be able to identify in the future. It's a very strange time and very troubling time, and it's going to be fascinating how politics develop over the next coming weeks and months.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, you got to excuse me. I think there's a bit of a delay in what's happening here. If you just bear with me for 2 seconds, I think our stream's sort of going very slow. Is that okay? Do I come across as okay now? Yeah. Hello.
Okay, from this end, yes.
Yeah, that's good. It was coming back there in an echo. So I'd just like to move over to you again, Joe, and I would like you to talk about what's happening in America at the minute, where you listen to the various radio stations and whatnot, and they're calling for people that would support Donald Trump. They're calling for them to be deprogrammed. And whenever I think about some of the things that has been happening in China of late, where there's these camps where what they do is they bring people in and they're attempting to deprogram them. And it sounds a bit like what's happening in communist China. Could you give us some commentary on that, please, and maybe tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen from the Democrats that they want to make a list of Trump loyalists, of Trump supporters, people who worked under the Trump administration, make a list to make sure they're never going to be employed again in the private sector. Also, they said that they want to make these sort of re-education camps, sort of like what China is doing currently to the Muslims who live there. Over 1 million Muslims are currently in a, quote, re-education camp in China. I'll tell you what, I mean, this is scary stuff. This is back to the gulags in the USSR, but coming to America. I've lived here my entire life, and I would never think this would be even thought of in this country. This so-called country, land of the free, is now going to be run by people who want to put people on a list simply because they support someone, simply because they support policy that they disagree with. This is not America. This is China. This is totalitarianism. This is a cultural Marxism coming back. And one of the things we have to do is to fight back against this, understand that this is not what this country is founded upon. One thing I've always said was, the difference between a conservative and a leftist is the leftist will say, we want to censor your speech because you're a conservative, because you love this country too much and we disagree with you. What I say is, I disagree with you, but I will die protecting your speech. It's completely different from the left. The left is coming after your rights simply because they want more power. They want more control. And under this trifecta of power that they're going to have in the Senate, in the House, and now in the White House, it's becoming more and more real. All these radical ideas that they've said in the last 4 years under Trump that they've wanted to do, re-education camps, making a list, a Green New Deal, killing jobs, putting China first and Americans last, it's going to happen. It's definitely going to happen. They're going to come after our Second Amendment. They're going to come after, the right that is granted to us to defend not only ourselves, our families, but our country from a tyrannical government. And this is going to become quickly a totalitarian style regime that we're going to be under, the Biden regime. I'm going to call it the presidency. It's a regime. And it's something that we have to we have to listen very closely what Biden and Kamala Harris is going to do, because very quickly our rights can go away in just a few executive orders. And I don't think a lot of Americans realize that.
Yeah. And, this is something that we've been warning of for a very long time. And whenever we've been talking about globalization per se, today we've entered the realm of which we were warning of, perhaps down throughout the years. And, the funny thing for me is that not a lot of people actually still they don't understand where it is that we've arrived at today. Jack, you're a man that has traveled far and wide, looking at these symptoms of what has came to where we are today. Could you maybe just tell us a bit about your experiences, whether that be in America, whether that be in England? And I know that you've went to other places also. So could you just tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's quite interesting. So when I went out to America to help out, firstly, I spent 2 weeks in Turkey to quarantine. So weirdly, you could fly from Turkey to America without having to quarantine in the US, but UK to America, was banned at the time. But I find it very interesting because we're not alone in the West in fearing extreme leftism. They're paranoid in Turkey about a communist revolution, as well as other terrorist interests, but there's genuine fear about communists kicking off. And so that was worrying to see from the Turkish people there, because again, this is why it's important we speak to people from all different countries around the world, because there is a growing fear of leftism. But when I managed to get to America, it was interesting. I think traveling around, I was very surprised to see Biden win as such, because of the widespread support for Trump. I went to 4 or 5 Trump rallies, and at each one, I think the smallest one I was at, there was 15,000 people at the peak of a pandemic. So people who would happily sort of risk everything to go and hear Trump speak because they supported him so much. Biden got maybe a few hundred people at best, at his best one, in cars, beeping their horns at a rally, which is just minute in comparison. But anyway, I even saw people, they were camping the night before to go and hear Trump speak. And that's like something you get for a rock star. It's not something you'd expect for a politician, but people were camping we were up in Michigan, we were up in the state of Washington, and people were camping in minus temperatures to see him. And that's just, it's incredible to see that widespread support. So that's why I'm very skeptical about the outcome of the election. And likewise, afterwards, I traveled around for journalistic purposes, a lot of the rallies, which were the Stop the Steal rallies, which are calling out the election and pointing out electoral fraud. I spoke to lots of different people, and lots of different people had first-hand eyewitness accounts of stuff that had gone on. From in Michigan, where one lady was told Republican watchers were moved back from the votes, and they were given binoculars. They moved 50 feet back, and they were given binoculars to have a look at what was going on, and the Democrats were allowed to stand next to the votes. And that, for me, it's very suspicious. Like, I'm not someone who jumps on the thing of, every state was biased, there's widespread electoral fraud. I think there was some fishy stuff going on in the key swing states. And so, yeah, that's sort of where I stand from my travels. I just think it's a very interesting situation. I'm not too sure what was going to happen in America. You have a President Biden whose only real supporters are hard left Antifa, but then you've got Trump, who's no longer president, but he's got more grassroots support than Biden. So it's going to be a very strange dynamic going on there, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just like to use this evening to. There's a lot of people that have been conditioned by the media to detest Trump, to detest everything that he stands for. But I would appeal to those people not to listen to the media and to go and listen to Trump's words. I mean, see what comes from his mouth. Also, if you examine what comes from the likes of Joe Biden's mouth and the people that surround him, I mean, these people are calling for their fellow citizens to be shut down, to be taken away off into camps and to be deprogrammed, and they're calling them terrorists. I mean, look at the crowds, look at the type of people that were visiting the rallies, where you had blacks, whites, people of all colors, of all nations, of all creeds who supported Trump. And, a testament is the man that's on our screen this evening. And I would appeal to people to stop, to listen and to examine, to understand that, do your research for yourself and listen to, as I say, actions speak the louder than the words that you would hear. And, if you look at Trump, I mean, there were 0 wars in Trump's presidency. If you look back at all his predecessors, every single one of those people, they took America into bloody wars where many, many people lost their lives. And James, it beggars belief how that some people don't actually see who the good is here and who the bad is.
Yeah, it's very difficult. We're living in a world of social media and mainstream media. We're living in an information overload world. For instance, if you Google my name, I'm probably a far-right Nazi, lunatic, Islamophobe, homophobe. You can name all the names, but because these are things that get applied to you once you join in the battle against the globalist parties, wherever they are. And you accept that and you understand. Just to give Joe a little bit more hope, we're kind of ahead of the game from you. We've lost our rights a little bit more quickly. They've been eroded. And for instance, let's take, the last 9 months in history. We've got a government who's got the idea now that it can tell the people what to do rather than advise them and recommend courses of action, for instance, with regard to public health in COVID. No, it's a matter of you shall do X, Y, and Z. You shall put something on your face. You will. This is the law. This is unthinkable for people of a certain generation in the United Kingdom. Yet it's not unthinkable for many, many young people who unfortunately have been schooled since 1997 when Tony Blair took over in the United Kingdom. But the advantages that the United States have, Joe, I would say is you do in essence have many states, many legislatures. Joe Biden doesn't necessarily have the power to impose a mask mandate. That does have to go to your governors, to your state legislatures, and there is a natural break on power. I understand that now that the House of Representatives, albeit a very narrow majority in the Senate, is basically a 50-50 split, which gives, how can we say, the maverick Democrats, things aren't necessarily going to be as straightforward. And again, the executive orders, mask mandates, we'll see how that actually pans out in reality, because I think Americans are a bit more, how can we say, a bit more less conditioned than the British. When the British PM says, wear a mask, very many people in a Pavlovian manner, oh, I've been told to wear a mask, I'll put a mask on, I don't want to argue, I don't want to get into trouble. But in America, there's a lot more, the conditioning isn't as deep-seated. So you're going to get a lot more people reacting, who the hell are you to tell me to put a mask on? I've looked at the numbers. There clearly isn't the Black Death knocking about. This COVID, whatever it might be, the average age of people who are dying is over the average age of people who die. It's clearly something that's you don't want to get if you're old and vulnerable. But this is being health is now politicized. It's to do with raw power. It's to do with psychological power and the social media sphere. You've got to rise above it. When you get involved, you've got to accept they're going to come at you. And that's why you've got to start at the grassroots. And the other advantage that, Joe, that I would say that you have is your open primary system. This isn't about Trump. Trump's term of office is now officially over. But what there is a huge movement, a MAGA movement. People who want to make America better for everybody in the United States, who reflect what Donald Trump was saying in that speech. And these people aren't going away. More so, they're energized. They're not happy. Yeah. They're not happy about the direction that the United States is going in. Now, if those people are organized, if they get together, they can, unlike in the United Kingdom, I'll come back to that, but they can get in at the local level, at the grassroots level, and take over. But I don't know how it is with the Democrat Party setup. That certainly can do it with the Republican Party, because one thing Donald Trump has exposed is that, like in the United Kingdom, you have a one-party system, a party of Davos. Republicans and Democrats, it's a fantasy, it's a myth sustained by the globalist media. We have the same myth in the United Kingdom. Conservative, Lib Dem, Labour, no, it's one party. And if you dare, for instance, I'm promoting direct democracy, helping the people decide things, yet I'm far right. How does that add? Well, it doesn't add up, obviously. This is globalism against those who want to retain rights, freedom, who respect the individual as the sovereign, the entity. And national sovereignty is merely the protection of the individual sovereign entity that's come from the Judeo-Christian foundations of England, which the best bits of which were taken across and in 1776 recognized in probably the most fantastic historical achievement in history of Judeo-Christian history, the Constitution of the United States of America. And I hope that the United States citizenry, the MAGA movement, Trump, whatever you want to call them, these are real family family people, people who want a better life for themselves and want the government to support them and not interfere with that life. So good luck to Americans. Stand up to your rights. Don't take it on the chin. Get involved at grassroots level and get this corruption, this corrupt cabal out of American politics. Because you say when the United States sneezes, we catch a cold. I'm very fearful that, well, maybe we found out a year ago, when China sneezes, we catch a cold. Yeah, we can't live in a world where our future is determined by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah. On the subject of Make America Great Again, and I guess that's why that ourselves here in the United Kingdom, I mean, that's why 17.4 plus million people, they went to the polls and they voted to leave the EU. And they did so because that the EU was taking too much of our laws, poking their nose in where it doesn't belong. And, you know, I believe from the bottom of my heart that democracy needs borders. And if you listen to what Trump was saying in that speech, he was saying that, and basically, you know, we want our borders, we want to protect our nation state, we want to protect our people. I mean, what is a government if it doesn't first and foremost put the citizens of any land before anyone else? And that's not to say that we can't reach out and we can't help people, and, you know, and we can't embrace others, and we can't be, you know, charitable when charity is needed. But however, whenever your own house is ordered, whenever you look after your own people, and, you know, your own people first and foremost, they have to come first. And, you know, these people, this new breed of politician, they seem to want to embrace the world. They seem to want to fill the country or the countries with everyone. And then the services get overburdened. Everything becomes overburdened. The price, the cost of property, the whole lot. And, you know, these people don't see the repercussions because they're not living amongst the people. They're not living. They're not getting the backlash that is caused, and it's happening all around the world at the minute. Joe, I mean, what's your experience from where it is that you live? Do you see? I mean, how long have you been in America? Were you born there? Did you grow up there? And have you seen changes over the time that you've lived in your life?
Yeah, I was born and raised here. I'm originally from Pennsylvania. I moved to Arizona about a year and a half ago. But I'll tell you what, the changes that I've seen is, you know, in the beginning of my life, obviously, I didn't really see much of it, right? During the Clinton, Bush, and then Obama administration, you didn't really see many changes. Under Obama, you saw a little bit more of a division was growing within America. But under President Trump, I'll tell you what changes I saw. And what I saw was President Trump did something that no other president did, and that was expose what government is truly doing behind the scenes to the American people, exposing what some may call the deep state, and seeing that the people are really waking up, right? And I like to call the Trump supporters that are Republican, right? I call them Trumplicans, because there really is a difference between Republican and Trumplican at this point, because you have the Mitch McConnells, the George Bushes, and whatnot that are completely different from Trump, Matt Gaetz, or Josh Hawley, or Senator Ted Cruz. These people want to put America first. You look at the establishment, what we call rhino Republicans, and Mitch McConnell's, et cetera. Those are different kinds of people, right? They want to put America last. They kind of want to keep ourselves in wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which President Trump and I would say the Trumplican MAGA movement, we want to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We want to bring our troops home. And the main thing here is, James, you talked about, going into the grassroots level. I mean, I think the first thing we need to do is take back the party. The party is lost. Yeah. And I'm involved in the Arizona GOP right now. And in the Arizona GOP, I'll tell you what, there's a big split right in half of those Trumplicans and the rhinos, the establishment swamp rhinos. It's split in half in the AZ GOP. We need to take it back. We need to take leadership. We need to be able to vote in these party issues. And I'm able to vote in party issues right now because I saw what was happening. I saw that our party, the Republican Party, was leaving its original values. It was putting Americans last and electing people like Mitch McConnell, electing people and allowing people like Mitt Romney to run for president. And it's these are the sort of problems that we're going to be facing now in the Republican Party. We need to hash out all the problems currently in the GOP. Once we figure that out, that's when we can really, really set stone and push to win elections. Because it's not just about winning the election, it's what kind of Republican is running, what kind of Republicans are in the Senate, and what kind of Republicans are in the House. Again, there's a big split. We have to weed out all the bad Republicans, all these establishment swamp Republicans, these rhinos, and get people who truly love this country, who will put America first. Very hard to find nowadays, but we have a lot of them. Just got to find out who wants to run. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, and just on that business of rhino, that's just for the live chat. I would like to say that's a Republican name only, and we had our own version of that here, which was Brino, and that was Brexit in name only. And there seems to be Ireland in name only, and Conservative in name only, and you know. And
yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how it's going. So, Jack, just before we move on, and again, this is on this subject of socialism, and then we'll move on to more positive things, because you know we need to talk about what are the solutions, and you know we need to be much more positive about things. I mean, there was a lot of people that voted for patriotism, for nation state, for nationality, and that was in America, and we'll talk about those people in a second. But and again, this is to the people that are on our stream that maybe just, you know, they listen to the media and they think that Trump is a bad person. And I just want to focus on socialism here for a moment or two. And what I want to do is that I want to try to make people understand, and that's even if you as a person, you know, you believe in social issues. Well, you know, there's a great deal of difference between social issues and, you know, stuff for the betterment of your community than there is with this socialism, which, you know, it's the baby brother of communism, or it's the precursor to all-out communism. So I would just like to play a little video here. And again, this I had cut this from something that I was on a stream just last week. And you know, I thought that it came across in the right way. And I want to try to play this so that people understands what it is that we're getting at here. And on the back of this video, Jack, if you just come on and you then start, you know, comment on the video. Some people, they get involved with socialism because they think that what they're doing is they're working within a social construct for the betterment of their community. But it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I just wish that more people would see that it is being used to tease these people in. And you see, this is what socialism does with people. It sucks them in, you know, it sucks them in, it gives them money, and everything is going swimmingly and everything is going great. And then what they do is they take them across the line, they take them well beyond the line, they take them to where they don't even know what the line is anymore, and they have to continuously move in order to get more funding. That funding stream's dried up, but if you believe in this, if you say that you support this, we can get you more funding from this group, and incrementally they're moved till the place where they don't even know where they started from. And that is what's happened to society. And you know something, what is conservatism all about? And I'll stand by conservatism to my dying breath. You see, it's about conserving your free will, your right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression, your right to call out politicians, your right to point out corruption, your right to point out bad law, and all of those things that form the basis, I would say, of a stable society. That thing called free will is where I would rather be, as opposed to where it is that we are right now and where it is that we're going. Protest is the oxygen of democracy. If you lose oxygen to anything, well, it withers and it dies. And this is where we stand in January of 2021. And we didn't give our vote for this. We didn't give our authorization for this. Pursuit of life, liberty, and it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, that's the American way, and potentially today we are seeing the end, albeit temporarily, because I believe that these people they defeat themselves because of the curtailing of people's rights. Jack, would you just like to comment on what you've just seen there, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, I was thinking, again, 2 points I wanted to make. The first one, it was raised in the video about socialists essentially giving people free money. And I think we see that go downhill. Again, it is a slight oversimplification, but the easiest analogy is to look at students in the UK. Students are given essentially, I know it's a loan as such, but it is essentially a large sum of money to do with as they please. And they use it very irresponsibly. When I was at uni, no one ever had money. People, where they spent all their money being unable to afford food, but they'd always have spent all their money on sort of clubs or other sort of non-healthy or non-sensible use. And you see it reflected in wider society. When you give people money, they feel they can just spend it because they haven't earned it. I think that's one of the most important things of, sort of financial stability and financial responsibility is you understand that instead of thinking the government's going to give me a paycheck at the end of the week, it now goes from, so I'm going to buy this TV, it's going to be, actually that TV is going to cost me, I don't know, say 36 hours of work. Do I need that? That Sky package is going to cost me this. Then you start prioritizing things because it puts things in perspective. So that's my first sort of issue with socialism, is it takes away sort of financial responsibility. You also see it as attacking others in society. You're never going to be able to tax the international billionaires and the corporations. You can put regulations in place to stop them strip mining our assets or exploiting the British people, but you're never going to get most of their money because it's either overseas or it's in assets, so it's not actually physical. So it ends up when they put the taxes up, it doesn't hit the people like Bill Gates, it hits people like you and me. So we end up paying more money, and it means our business is crippled and the corporations still get stronger, because a lot of the time, even with socialists in power, they're still giving the government backhanders and they're still deciding the legislation. Corporations will probably happily pay higher taxes on certain things because they know it will put their competitors out of business, because smaller businesses won't be able to afford those same taxes, and then they can go and hoover up the leftover money. So a lot of the time socialism enables the elite anyway. As well as the issue of socialism, obviously you have the growth of power of the state as well. It's the belief that the state knows better than you, the citizen. And we're seeing it a little bit at the moment of the effects of big government with the COVID pandemic in the UK. So personally, I do think a lockdown is necessary until we find out more about this sort of second strain. But I think the government has overstepped where it's been arresting people for protesting. I think that's completely out of order, arresting people for drinking cups of coffee. And we are powerless to do anything against that, despite the fact even our police, it's policing by consent. There's not much sort of consenting of these new extreme laws going in. I think with COVID, we do have to be sensible, but this whole pandemic has been a prime example of government acting without account and being able to do as they please, which is hugely concerning, and just, as I said, a taste of socialism. And I think what I would say about Trump, for people who are skeptical of leftism, for people who didn't like Corbyn, you've got to look at who people like Corbyn are supporting. They're supporting Biden and his cronies. Corbyn might not be, I'm sure he has voiced support for Biden, but he was voicing support for the people who stood behind Biden. People like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, people had like, I forget her first name, but Tlaib, sort of extremist left-wing politicians are behind Biden, and that's who you're voting for. Are you telling me that Biden, who, again, I don't want to make fun of dementia or anything, but it looks like he has got something like dementia. Do you think he's really going to be the one calling the shots in America, a 78-year-old man? No, it's going to be his team underneath him doing that, and his team are a bunch of far-left extremists. So again, it's not so much, oh, I don't like Trump, I'd much prefer Biden because he looks nice, he's like a nice friendly old man. You look at the people who will really be running that country, it's left-wing extremists.
Yeah, indeed. And before we move on to James, I mean, I would just like to sort of clarify what I was saying in that video, is that, you know, is that there are genuine, decent people that are sucked into this socialism, thinking that it's a social construct for the betterment of their communities. But, you know, you really need to look and watch and, you know, understand what it is that you're being sucked into. And no doubt, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that people have seen how that socialism moves them to beyond the line, further down the road. And as I say, you know, to the point whereby that they don't even know where the line is anymore, and they don't know where they've came from. So, you know,
I was just going to say, you can look at socialism's track record in the UK. Every time we've had a Labour socialist government, there's been more unemployment afterwards and more damage to the economy after their governance than there was before, which has, again, it's left everyone in a worse position. So you might increase your quality of life, you might have a job for a couple of years, but you're going to be in a worse position than when you started out had you just progressed without that in the first place.
Absolutely. And James, would you just like to give us a little bit about, I mean, I'm a man that has always, you know, been a hard worker. out working, earning what I need to live, and that's just how things actually work the best. And I've been incentivized by the system that we have right now to get up off my backside and to go out and to work hard to have things, have the get the dividend of what it is that I do in terms of work. Would you just like to maybe expand on that, James?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can get in danger of getting it mixed up in century-old language and viewing things in the terms of 100 years ago, whatever. Especially with regard to the likes of terms like socialism. Joe mentioned cultural Marxism, all this Gramsci stuff, all this Frankfurt School stuff. It's all one movement, and it's morphed into the. It rides off the back of globalism. It's all one separate philosophy. It's the philosophy of freedom, individual rights, government protecting those rights. And whether, for instance, Jack referred to a few indicators of socialism, one of which I would argue would be something like the concept of a lockdown. Now, you go back 18 months and lockdown was a meaningless word to most people, although Americans would recognize what it meant. It meant we've got a problem in the prison, they're all shut in the cells, and we've got a lockdown. Lockdown is now something that's referred to that a government imposes on free.
James, I would just like to stop you there for a moment, and I want to say something before we move on here. Is that, I have a very good friend at the minute, and this is the truth of the matter, and he's lying with one of those masks on. And, I would like to just say to John Ross and to John Ross's family who comes to the screen, I didn't quite see that, personally speaking, I'm big enough myself to move around and without, I don't fear getting a virus, is the truth of the matter. However, this is a strapping man who literally, is a veteran, and he's suffering greatly at the minute as a result of receiving this virus, which is undoubtedly sweeping our world at the minute. So again, we've got to be very, very careful about what we talk about in terms of lockdowns and so on, because there's so many people that we know today that has actually been affected by this and lost family members. So again, if we try to keep it to do with the socialism and the Trump and whatever. So again, I'll just bring you back on again. Sorry about that, James.
Yeah. No, what I'm basically indicating that is these things like lockdown, the reaction to COVID-19, without getting into that subject and what exactly it is, and it's the age-old method of problem, reaction, solution. It's the age-old technique of using fear, installing fear, because people who are afraid are a lot more easily controlled or taken down a line that maybe is not in their interests. And I think this is what when we talk about the socialism in Britain, for instance, and the economics of socialism, the promising jam today and spending money on the never never, we've seen that now bought into by the Conservative Party. And when we look at the fiscal record, we now see that whereas up to the end of the Thatcher period, it was a truism. The Tories came in, tried to get the books to balance for a while. The Labour Party would get elected, public spending would get out of hand. The Tories would come back in, try and get it under control again. That's kind of gone out of the window now. The Ponzi scheme, they've all given up the ghost and hope it doesn't go pop on their watch, basically. And we've seen the expansion in the public debt like nothing else in the last year. The same in the United States of America. And the socialism, we look historically, where's it been tried? Cuba, USSR. I think the best example historically is probably Korea, where a country's been split in two. One's gone down a socialist path, one's gone down a path of freedom and individual rights. And you can see the results in North Korea and South Korea. It's almost like an experiment that we should all be looking at and saying what works and what doesn't work. Well, that clearly doesn't work, and that seems to work a bit better. But we've got to look to the future now. the totalitarianism is on the rise. It's being normalized, and people have to get involved at grassroots. And coming back to what Joe was saying in Arizona, I mean, Joe's really, really lucky. He's saying the rhinos, and you've got your rhinos, and then you've got your true patriots. You've got what Senator Mark Fincham. The beauty of what's happened in the last 4 months, Joe, is you can now look out into your state, and you know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. You know who's stood up in this last 3 months for what's just, right, and lawful, and you can see those who have happily turned a blind eye to things that might be going wrong because they're better off if we ignore them. You can see it, Joe. It's up to you now. You get the movement going, support people like Mark Fincham in your state of Arizona, and you're on the go. You're on the move.
Yeah. And, let's try to take the stream in a sort of a positive way. And, look who we've got on the channel this evening. Myself from Northern Ireland, Joe from America, Jack from England, and also James from England. And, that's got to be something good whenever that we're coming together. We're coming together to talk about the concerns that everyone has. We're coming together to talk about the things that, if left unchecked, they have the potential to damage us all. And, back to this, the point whereby that when America sneezes, and that's what's happened for all of my life. I mean, I'm now 52 years of age, although I look 30, I know that, but, that's the oil of Ulay that I use. But, all of my adult life, I have noticed that whatever happens in America, well, it soon comes down our line. So, on the other side of things, because let's face this. I mean, we are freedom-loving people. We love our freedoms, our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression, our right to criticize bad law, our right to point out corruption, and our right to hold our politicians to account. And we can't let go of that, and we can't let these people take that away from us. So we need to talk about solutions that would be put in place, and that's between us all, that would ensure that those freedoms last for future generations, for our children and for our children's children. And you heard that from Donald Trump at the very start, whenever he gave that great speech, and he was really talking about, looking after the children and looking after the history, the heritage of all places, because, we've got to remember what the past had dished out, because there was an old saying that those that forget the past are condemned to repeat it. And if we do away with our history, then what happens is that you actually forget about your past. So before we move around the screen, I would just like to say that, the people that want to remove our freedoms, what they do is they team together with people right around the Western world in order to derail our successes. Joe, how is it that what we're going to do is we're going to team together in order to derail their successes, because we have something much greater to fight for than they do. They don't know what they're leading themselves into, where we know where we've been, and we know where we're not going. How are we going to achieve that, Joe?
It's really a beautiful thing, right? We're seeing, look at us here, right? Like you just mentioned, we're from all over the world, and we all have one thing in common. That's the love for freedom. That's the love and support of Judeo-Christian values. And we really are just a really big family across the world. And we're all going to fight together against a Marxist agenda that is, another pandemic that we're in right now, which is Marxism. And I'll tell you what, I mean, as long as we remind ourselves what's happened in the past, like you said, that was a quote by George Santayana, those who forget the past are condemned to be part of it in the future. Remember a few things, right? Ben Franklin said that, I have it pulled up here actually, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Yeah. And to understand that the government is supposed to work for you. You don't work for the government. And the moment that you allow the government to take over your life, you allow the government to strip away some of your liberty because you believe that, let me just give away, this little bit of this one right because, I want to be safe. You don't think that's going to snowball over and over and over again? It's happened in the past. Cuba, Venezuela started, I think back in the 80s, of promises of free healthcare and free education. They have the promises of saying, you know what, we have economic inequality. We're going to make that equal. And look where they are right now. Venezuela once used to be the richest country in South America, the largest oil reserve in the world. And look where they're at right now. This can happen in America, in the UK, in many other countries, just because of this sort of false hopes, false promises of free this, free that. We're gonna fight back against hate speech. Now, what is the true ideas behind the true what's the word I'm looking for? Motive behind all of these things? It's so the government can take over your life, tell you how to run your life, tell you that no, you don't know anything. We know everything. So this is one of those things that we have to. We're going into some really dark days ahead of us. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to lie to the audience. We are going into some very dark days ahead of us. But the hope that I'm going to give you guys is that it's not over yet. It's not going to be over for a while. And as long as we continue to have this strong relationship across the world of conservatives, people who love their country, who love freedom, we're going to be fine. And if we keep on fighting, you get involved in the grassroots level, in local politics and state politics, etc., we are going to win back our country. We're going to win back freedom. And we need to hold our politicians accountable. We absolutely do. Because then we're going to have, like I mentioned earlier about these rhinos, we're going to have people like Mitch McConnell, Mitt Romney, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot. It's quite a lot, actually. Hold them accountable. It's very, very vital. And remind your politicians that they work for you. Your taxpayer dollars go to their salary. They work for you. It's not the other way around. They don't run your life. You run the government. And we have to remind them of that.
Yeah, indeed. And, I would just sort of like to say that, what's happening in America right now, if we look closely at, here in Northern Ireland, in England, in Scotland, and in Wales, we have what we call devolved assemblies right around the United Kingdom. And those places are occupied by a conglomerate of minorities. And the conglomerate of minorities stand together in order to derail anything conservatism. And they do it in a way that they cut their nose off to spite their face. And even though that the policies that they're pushing is largely detrimental to their children and their children's children, these people don't seem to get it. Jack, no doubt you've seen that in your day, and I know that at Turning Point you constantly highlight that type of thing. Would you like to give us your experience of how that you see that happening?
Yeah, certainly. I think we see it across the board, as you said, with the lack of foresight and virtue signaling, where people care more about how many likes and clicks they get online than they do about the country or the future they're giving. So they stir up things. I think we've seen it. The latest thing is BLM. You saw all the sort of Labour politicians taking the knee to that. Even Keir Starmer, a man who could potentially be our prime minister, taking the knee to a Marxist organisation to get a few Facebook likes. That's all it was, really, to try and show that he's down with the kids and that he loves black people and he could be the champion of black people if they needed to be. When again, a lot of these people, they only see black people as an accessory to make them look woke. And that's one of the messages which isn't getting through to the BME communities, is these leftists, they don't really care about you, because the moment you swap to conservatives, to be a conservative, they are extremely racist towards you. They call people all sorts of racist names. I've got multiple BAME conservative friends who are called all sorts of expletives. Again, I won't repeat those sort of horrible words on here, but I'm sure you can imagine. Frustrating to see, because it shows the left doesn't really have any principles about this stuff when they're creating a two-tier police system, when they're tying the police's hands with red tape so they're scared to police in case they're called a racist, in case they're called a homophobe, in case they're called whatever. It's hugely frustrating to see, because, as I said, the left, they don't see the long-term consequences of, we will be living in a society where the police aren't allowed to police, or they start persecuting people. They're giving the excuse to persecute people like conservatives or people who politicians deem should be persecuted by the police, which sets a very dangerous precedent in this country. So yeah, that would be my sort of take on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And James, you and I had a conversation last evening, and you're telling me that you're one man on a council, and you have a conglomerate of people that are literally against you, and it doesn't matter what you say or what you do. They team together in order to derail your successes. But you're like a David and Goliath scenario. Would you like to tell us a bit about the council and some of the battles that you've had, and the reasons why that you've ended up in the paper as a result for standing up against these people?
Well, obviously, I think firstly, David beat Goliath, number one, and it's not true that it's true that the Labour Party react in the way you say. The Conservatives and Independent and some of the Independents, the exact opposite, and you can see how over time it's very straightforward at a very local level to introduce a bit of common sense, just to show what people, the public, what's going on, how the Labour Party continue in power and the Conservatives Party. Because when Jack obviously refers to the left, those policies that we're seeing in the United Kingdom, we've had a Conservative government for quite some time now. Conservative in name only, obviously, because they do exhibit all the tendencies that Jack was describing. And we've got that being implemented in the United Kingdom by a so-called Conservative Party. That's the reality of what's happening. But coming back to the experiences of actually getting involved, the main what I find most is that what the Labour Party particularly don't like happening is for the public to actually know what they're doing. As long as everything's kept quiet and behind closed doors, and people, get on with their lives and don't quite notice how the money's coming in, how the money's been divvied out, how it's been basically wasted and filtered into the back pockets of anybody within any contact with the Labour movement. That's basically what's going on. Our politics has basically become mafia, control of budgets to pursue whatever. It's so corrupted, not necessarily actively corrupted. It's just so lazy that there is no connection between decisions made in council and what's in the best interests of the public. Once the Labour Party have got control, they've got their programme of events and they're going to increase the budget, they're going to increase the tax and going to spend it on what they've decided to spend it on. There's no contact, there's no conversation. And the solution is get involved. Initially, when you're a minority, all you can do is observe what's going on, share that information locally with people, build up relations, get people interested in why they're getting taxed, whatever it is, £150, £200 a month for the local tax, but the council is telling them that no, they can't fill the potholes in the road, they can't empty the bins once a week anymore, and they've got these forests of people sitting on bums in offices, earning a load and spending the time actively courting votes for their particular party at the next election. It's just got so lazy and corrupt. And I think one thing that Donald Trump, I'd describe him as the greatest whistleblower of all time. He has shone a light on this nefarious activity, whether it's in the FBI, the CIA, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. He's shone a light on the press, the corruption and the stitch up between the press and different political interests. He's shone a light on these fake organizations. For instance, social justice, nothing to do with social justice. Black Lives Matter, they don't really care about any lives, let alone black lives. We've got Stand Up to Racism. We've got Hope Not Hate. One of the local 3-letter words that we've just cropped up locally was spontaneous acts of giving. Have applied for a grant at the local parish council. It's a Labour front and it sounds really, really, really nicey, and they'll get a couple of grand because they'll vote them in, and it'll go into the Labour Party activists' back pockets. And this is going off all over the country, alongside the cultural Marxist programme of putting a wedge between the church and community. So it's also a local takeover of child group communities, of do-gooder communities, whether it's picking litter, whether it's helping the whatever victim group they can think of, and they'll set up a little brand, they'll set up a Facebook, they'll set up a GoFundMe page, and they will try and put a wedge between the people and the traditional, genuine, sincere people who want to act charitably in society, which tends to come from the religious organisations, and in our case, the Church of England, which has obviously been dying on its feet, or not even on its feet anymore, is it? It's dying on its back, unfortunately. There's this wealth of Christianity, this upsurge of people who are really concerned about our Judeo-Christian heritage. And what we've got in England is globalist squatters, socialist squatters occupying positions in the Church of England, keep literally keeping a wedge between Christians and the houses where they could congregate and get together and talk and worship. Yes, we're in bad times, but from bad times could come forth strong voices, strong people, and that's where we're at. Strong people need to stand up, bring a bit of common sense into the public realm, and I think the future is bright in taking on this corruption, because we can now see what the battlefield is. We can see that the corruption exists, and we can, certainly in the United States of America and in Britain, really. Once people have woken up to the one-party con, we can see what the battle is, and if we tackle it from the grassroots up and stop messing around trying to tackle it from some one, Trump showed the way, and he's shone a light, but he's shown the people, the MAGA movement, that they can do it. They don't need Trump. And quite frankly, to ask one man to do it, that's silly. It's lazy. Together, it can be done.
Yeah. Whenever Trump got elected back in, was it 2016? Yeah, November 2016. I remember thinking that Donald Trump probably wasn't my trump card, because we have seen so many times before in the past how that we hoped and we really wanted certain individuals to take on the reins and to return things to the benefit of the people, putting the needs before people, putting the needs before the wants of ideologies. And, I reserved my judgment, and I watched and I listened and I heard what he had said. And I have to say, in the last few days, I began to realize that man was for real. And, look who was criticizing him. Look at the media criticizing him. Look at what they're accusing him of. And as I say, what they're accusing him of doesn't actually match the words that he is saying or the deeds that he has done. And that's a good measure of who Donald Trump is. So, Joe, as we're coming to a close, I would just like to sort of move around the screen. And I would like, Joe, if you could just tell us a little bit about the show that you run, who it is that you appeal to, and the format of the show. And we'll do exactly the same with Jack. We'll do exactly the same with James. And we'll do it sort of in a nutshell, but in no rush, Joe. If you're the guest here, over to you. Tell us all about what it is that you do in America.
Yeah, so like I said before, I run a show called Cup of Joe, Conservatives Do It Better. It's a conservative-driven show. We talk about Judeo-Christian values. We talk about America, why America is a great country, why our values are so unique, and our values are something that we should hold close to our hearts, the importance of family. We bring on people from Congress onto our show pretty often. We've had Charlie Kirk on our show, the founder of Turning Point USA. We've had many amazing guests. We have many amazing guests coming in soon. I believe we've also had Nigel on our show for election night coverage, and many great people to give different perspectives about what's going on right now. We appeal to everyone. We want everyone to come and listen. I have a few leftists that actually listen to my show because they see that it's a good way of learning about what is conservatism, what do we truly believe. And I'm open on bringing leftists on my show. I'm open to bringing communists on my show to talk about this, because I think it's important. No matter what you believe, I said this earlier, I will die fighting for your speech, fighting for you to have those beliefs. The main thing here is, the way I see it is, you are still an American to me, right? And I'm talking about, American and over here, if I bring a guest over here, and I will fight for you. And we should come on and have a discussion. And that's the main purpose of the show, is to have a discussion, to figure out what do we need to do to fix what's happening right now in our country, which our country is broken. Let's be honest. We need more than just 4 years of President Trump. We need more of that. We need more of that sort of leadership in our country.
Yeah. And
So,
one more question for you, Joe. And you
Sure.
call this show Restore. And if there was anything that you would like to restore in America today, what is it that you would like to restore?
There's a lot, man. I'll have to say, we need to restore one, election integrity. We need to restore that. That's probably our number one thing right now. The people don't have faith in our elections right now, no matter what the outcome of it was. They don't have faith in our elections. But I think the main thing that is really kind of broken this country is, we need to restore faith in God in this country. We have this amazing country that I believe God gave to us, and in recent years we've seen a lot of people have been leaving that. A lot of people have been saying, you know what, we're going to get God completely out of our lives, and I think that's wrong. I think it's absolutely wrong. Believe what you want to believe, but understand that this country was founded under Judeo-Christian values. We have God-given rights, not given by man. And I agree with that. Restore Trump back as president. But unfortunately, we can't do that right now. But I'll tell you what, we need to restore God, family, and normalizing a family. Really, that's a big thing here. We have organizations like Black Lives Matter coming out and saying that they want to get rid of the normal family in America. They want to completely get rid of them. So normalize that, restore families, restore value, the values in our home, in our country. And that's how I truly believe we're going to make America great again. I think that's what Trump meant when he ran for president in 2016. And that's one thing I think we need to restore.
Yeah, the terminology restore, it actually came from something that a pastor that myself and Jack interviewed one day had said. And he said, it was a quote from the Bible when he says, restore the years that the locust hath eaten. And that's where the name Restore came from. So there you go. Jack, over to you. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about Turning Point also, and what it is that you would like to restore within the United Kingdom today.
Yeah, of course. So Turning Point UK, it's predominantly a student movement in the sense that we challenge the left-wing biases on campus. So it's widely acknowledged that UK universities are overrun with leftists, both in the student population and in the academic population. I use examples from my own university career where most of my work was submitted anonymously. But if I wrote a piece from a conservative angle, I'd often get a 3rd or a low 2-1. But if I wrote it from a leftist angle, they'd give me a high 2-1 or a 1st, which it was quite frustrating to see that blatant bias. And even to the extent where I think it was subconscious from the lecturers, because if you wrote a conservative piece, they would go over the top to rip it apart. So it would literally be all red pen down your essay. But if it was a leftist piece, because they agreed with it, it would be tick, 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 tick like that, full marks essentially. And so that's what we do, is to try and turn university back into a place of education where all political opinions, providing they're not extreme, are respected and can be discussed. So that's something we campaign for. We also, again, part of our aim is to give confidence back to politicians, because we've had it before. Even our Turning Point stands at our Turning Point event. I've been attacked by Antifa 3 times in my life. We've had contributors to Turning Point UK be attacked. One of my close friends at Turning Point, he did an interview where he interviewed Remainers and made them look a bit silly, which they are, just by essentially broadcasting their opinions. But he had to be escorted out of a nightclub in Brighton with a jacket over his head by the security, because the local Antifa firm recognised him and were telling the bouncers they were going to beat him up, if not worse. We've been spat on multiple times, and this is, again, an organisation which is 2 years old and has a presence, but not a major presence, on universities across the country, let alone with our politicians. They are petrified of being attacked. Most student unions now will not have Conservative MPs or speakers on campus because of the security costs. So rather than the unions or the universities telling left-wing students, or again, a lot of the violence doesn't even come from the students, it comes from local Labour or local left-wing activists, sorry, not Labour, local left-wing activists, the violence comes from, they won't police their campus and stop them coming in. They would rather cancel the event. And it's concerning that our MPs can't speak on campuses. You saw Jacob Rees-Mogg got punched when he spoke at UWE, and that sort of marks the end of him doing university speaking tours, which is quite unfortunate. So our job is to try and stand there where others are too scared to stand and say, no, these are our values. This is what we stand for. We're not extremists. This is stuff that the majority of Brits believe in, well over 50% of the population, and we shouldn't be ashamed of saying that. So we're here to try and give hope and courage to other people.
Yeah, and sorry, and exactly the same for you, James. If you would just like to tell people a little bit about your party and also what it is that you would like to restore, and over to you, James.
Well, I've got many chances to answer the question on what to restore, but restore common sense in our public life and rational decision making. And I represent, I guess, there's three guests on your show tonight, John, and yourself and Cup of Joe. Joe, you're taking on the battle on one front. You're getting the conversations going. You're communicating, sharing ideas, welcoming ideas. Jack's taking on the battle on an educational front. That's so key. And I'm taking on the battle at the real hard edge, where I was not chuckling at you because of your experiences with Antifa, Jack. I was chuckling because it's almost like a badge of honor. If you haven't had Antifa in your face and learned how to deal with that situation, then it's a badge of honor. It's part of the scar of the process of getting involved. Now, I'm part of a 5-star direct democracy party, which is looking at completely upturning the approach to politics in the United Kingdom. We're looking at introducing a formal Bill of Rights, which brings together all our historic God-given rights, going back to Magna Carta, a document that is the foundation of the American Judeo-Christian founding documents. And we're looking at removing corruption from politics. And that corruption is in the form of all our main political parties. We don't have a whip system. You can go and check us out at 5dd.uk. We are basically an umbrella for anybody who wants to take the battle on in their backyard. And I encourage you to go in at the lowest level and work from there, because you can see once you get involved, people, as Jack says, real people, once you get beyond the noise of social media and the noise of media, real people respond to other real people. And if you get in at the local level, it spreads, because we have the same fundamental wants in life. We want a comfortable, secure life for our parents, for our siblings, and for our children. And we need to restore decency and common sense to the public sphere.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, James. And thanks very much for everyone that has come on. Thanks to the people on the live chat that has been good enough with some of the comments that they've made. And look, at this point, I would just like to advertise something that it is that we are going to be doing in the next couple of days. And this channel, Restore, is going to begin down the line of looking at some of our victims of our past troubles and whatnot. And the reason why we're going to do that is because our establishment are not looking after our veterans. They're not looking after the victims of even the Northern Ireland Troubles. And we're going to be telling the stories of these people who they're being treated shamefully by our system. And, you know, whilst terrorists have immunity from prosecution here in the United Kingdom, we have victims who are, I'm just told today, if I listen to the news, that, you know, victims' pensions are held back and they're fighting over who's paying for victims' pensions. And this is unbelievable. And these are people that have been maimed, that have lost legs, have lost limbs, and to give them a quality of life, you know. I mean, it's adding insult to injury, the very fact that they're fighting over who's going to be paying for this. But on this Sunday evening, we have a man that's coming on our screen, and we just popped up the advertisement here. It's a man called David Kelly, and David Kelly will be telling us the story of Paddy Kelly. Paddy Kelly was a member of the legitimate Irish army, and he was murdered by the IRA terrorists. And you know, this was an Irishman that was murdered by so-called Irish freedom fighters, and they were freeing Ireland, you know, one Irish army member at a time, and also was a member of the Guards, the legitimate police force that was killed along with Paddy Kelly. And this is going to be a very interesting story for everyone to listen to. And as for the platform, as for ourselves, I mean, we're going down the line whereby that we are reaching out into places that I guess that a lot of people have never reached before. And we have our sights set on reaching into the Irish Parliament, the Dáil, or the Dáil, whatever way that some people suggest it. And we're going to reach out in a way that we're going to start the conversation and talk to these people. And we'll have some interesting people that has offered to help us try to achieve this here. And we're going to really scratch the surface and ask the questions. I mean, is it ever acceptable that, you know, for years our loved ones have been murdered by the IRA, and they say in pursuit of their romantic dream of a united Ireland, and they've murdered our people, and they continue to agitate and rub our people's noses in it, and you know, and they have no respect whatsoever for the victims that they created. So we're taking the platform down a stream that we're going to be highlighting the stories of the victims, and we're going to ensure that those victims actually have a voice. So we're looking forward to actually doing that. And, you know, again, I would like to thank everybody for coming on the screen. Joe, don't be a stranger. And, you know, you're our American correspondent as of now, and I hope that you accept that as a challenge. And Jack, I thank you again for coming on. And Jack, again, don't be a stranger. I know Turning Point does a great job throughout the UK. They highlight a lot of things, and they put themselves in the firing line a lot. And you know, it's no wonder that that man had to be escorted out of a nightclub, because I've seen some of the good successes that they've had in highlighting and exposing some of the things that these Marxists are doing. And you know, I'd just like to say before we close the screen, and we'll go back to this, you know, your belief, your culture, your way of life, your lifestyle, and your lifestyle choices, they should be implemented in a way that they don't have any interference in anyone else's way of life. And, you know, I believe that that forms the basis of stability. And if we make that work, we then have stability. So I'd just like to move around the screen. If you, Joe, would just like to say your goodbyes to the people on the stream, and then we'll move from Joe to Jack to James, and whenever that's done, I'm going to play us out with something slightly different this evening. And this, you know, this might surprise people, but I believe that we do have to do this on the day whenever the transition in the United States of America, that great place that has given the world so much, you know, the transition today, well, will it be for the better or will it be for the worse? Time will only tell. So over to you, Joe. If you'd just like to say your goodbyes, and we'll move around the screen.
Well, thank you for having me, John. Appreciate it. I'd love to be your correspondent for America. I'd love to have that. And, you know, it's been a pleasure here and seeing the chat. The chat's amazing. Remember, guys, freedom isn't free, and we're going to fight hard for it.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.
So yeah, thank you for everyone for tuning in and listening. Please send this to other people if you think it could help them, particularly if you've got like a lefty cousin or a lefty uncle or something. Please do send them this, and hopefully we can show them some common sense. Thank you.
James?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure. It's been great having an American talking with us tonight. I'd like to say God bless America, and God bless Donald Trump for the last 4 years. He's been an absolutely fantastic president for you, from my point of view, and for the world. And God bless America.
Yeah. And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and even if it's not for the next few years, even if it's temporarily suspended, it won't be forever, and that we can guarantee. So thanks very much to everybody for coming along, and I'm going to play us out. And I would like to ask the people on the screen not to go anywhere. This will be over quickly, and we'll have a quick chat before we go off.
And we're proud of it, proud of our traditions, proud of our national character,